First story. I regret accusing my boyfriend of cheating, believing my jealous friend's lies that she hooked up with him. Now my boyfriend has dumped me, and my ex-friend is harassing me. I've been best friends with Becca since 2010. We were college roommates, and then after we graduated, we still lived together up until I moved in with my boyfriend Nate in 2019. One thing about Becca is that she's always had a drinking problem for as long as I've known her. And she's done stuff while drunk that has sometimes caused problems in our friendship. She does try to stay sober, but every few years something will happen to make her start drinking again, which is what happened earlier this summer. So last Saturday Becca called me because she was drunk somewhere and needed a ride home. I couldn't go pick her up because I had the flu and I was on cold medicine, so Nate went to get her instead. A couple of days after that, I started noticing that Nate was being weird with his phone. Normally he leaves it out on the coffee table if we're watching TV or whatever, but he started putting it face down so I couldn't see what notifications he was getting. My first thought was that he was trying to plan a surprise, and because of the timing, I thought that maybe Becca was helping him. Yesterday I saw Becca. I told her that Nate was being sneaky all of a sudden and asked her if he said anything about maybe proposing soon. She asked me if I looked through his phone, and I said no. Becca started crying and told me that she and Nate hooked up in his car the night that he came to pick her up. Her excuse was that she was really drunk and didn't fully know what she was doing. She said she'd been texting him since telling him that he needed to tell me what happened or else she was going to. I asked Becca to show me the texts, but they were all in the app Signal, which deletes messages after a day. So all I could see was that she and Nate had a chat thread, but nothing that they said. I told her to text Nate in front of me so I could see what he said, and she did. But we got no read receipt and so no response at all. So it didn't prove anything. I asked Becca if she was sure she wasn't so drunk that she maybe imagined it or thought a dream was real. And she absolutely lost her SHT on me and said that she knows that she's horrible when she drinks, but that she's not effing delusional and she doesn't make SHT up. She said that I could believe her or not, and it's my choice, but she was telling me the truth. I said I needed to go home and talk to Nate. So when I got home, I confronted Nate with what Becca had said. And he acted shocked and denied that anything like that had happened at all, and said he didn't know why she'd think so or say so. He said that he had just given Becca a ride home, and the only thing that happened was that they talked about how he and I had been together for a long time and how we should get married already. He admitted they were talking on Signal the next couple of days, but he said that it was about exactly what I thought, that he was asking her about engagement rings and what kind of proposal I would want. Nate replied to Becca's message before asking her if she made up a story about them hooking up to not ruin the surprise about his proposal. And she texted him back that there was no proposal and to stop playing dumb. So then Nate called her pretending like I wasn't in the room and told her that she needed to stop whatever she was trying to do because we were on the verge of breaking up, and he'd rather just have the surprise be ruined. But Becca just kept telling Nate to stop lying until he got angry and hung up on her. I really didn't know what to think, and I still don't. Right now, Nate is really upset and not really talking to me much. He says that it's bad enough that Becca acted insane and ruined his plan to propose, but it's even worse that I believed her lies even a little and would think that he would ever cheat on me. Becca texted me, saying she was sorry, but otherwise I haven't talked to her either. I don't want to think that Nate would cheat on me or that he'd take advantage of Becca if she was that drunk, but I feel like I can't be 100% sure because I've known Becca for 13 years. And I also just can't believe that she'd lie to me about something this important. And I know that she does have a drinking problem, so I can believe that she'd sleep with my boyfriend if she was drunk out of her head. She's done some pretty awful things in the past when she's been drunk. I don't want to wrongly accuse Nate of something he didn't do, but I don't want to be an idiot. Relevant comments. Signal doesn't automatically delete messages unless you turn that feature on. Would he have? It's not the automatic default. But if Nate created the chat with Becca and set it for messages to disappear after 24 hours, then all of her messages with him will do that without input from her. Someone asks what OP wants help with. Sleuthing ideas, who is more believable, revenge, etc. I think what I initially wanted was just a sounding board for who sounded more believable. But someone gave me the tip that you actually can recover messages from Signal. So when I have a chance later tonight, I'm going to try to do that to see if I can get some actual proof of what happened. But so far I haven't talked to anyone else about this though. I really just don't want to spread around what did or didn't happen to the rest of my friends or family without actually knowing for sure. What else has Becca done to you while drunk? So in the past, when she's been drunk, Becca's blacked out and started fights with me or other people. She'll say really out of line insulting things. She's kicked people out of our apartment because she didn't remember inviting them in. She's accused me of stealing clothes from her because I was wearing an outfit that looked like something that she also owned. That kind of thing. She's never hooked up with anyone that I was dating, but she's definitely hooked up with guys that she knew I was interested in. Who has the greater motivation to lie here? Nate or Becca? Becca did have a big problem with Nate when we first got together, and she was really upset when I moved out of our apartment to move in with him. I could see her still being angry about it, or still not liking him, but just not saying anything. From what Nate said, they weren't making the plans on Saturday. But Becca brought up that it's been 7 years and asked why we're not married yet. And then the day after he asked her about rings. What is her reason for not liking him? So at the time she was in one of her longest stretches of being sober. And she said that I was abandoning her for some guy when she needed my support the most. And then when I moved out, she tried to make it out like she wouldn't be able to stay sober without me living with her. And Nate basically had to step in and point out that she couldn't stay sober anyway. So to stop guilting me. It's possible she blames you for her current drinking. And Nate saying he wants to propose triggered her anger for some reason. Everything you say here makes sense to me. Becca has said stuff like this in the past. Not specifically about Nate. But sometimes when she starts drinking again, she acts like it's unfair that I'm not getting dragged down with her or doing more to help her. And I think on some level she might still think it's his fault that I moved out and don't keep as close an eye on her as I did back when we lived together. I don't know if she'd really go as far as to lie about something like this just for that reason. I really hope she wouldn't, but I could completely believe that she feels like this. Update. 2 days later. So on Thursday night, after I got everyone's advice, I told Nate that I had found out a way to recover deleted messages from Signal. He immediately took out his phone and opened the app and asked me to show him how to do it. So I already thought that must mean he was telling me the truth, because he didn't panic or hesitate at all. Which was good because when I tried to download Signal on my old phone, it turned out that it's too old to support the current version of the app, so it wouldn't work. Nate then asked me if we were going to have to go out and buy a new phone for me to believe that he was telling me the truth. And he said that he was willing to do it if that's what it would take. I told Nate it wasn't that I didn't believe him. I just wanted to have some proof because I just couldn't understand why Becca would lie about it. Nate said that she would lie about it because she's a effing crazy drunk bee, and there's literally no way for a non-crazy person to understand why she would do anything. And once the messages prove that he didn't ever want me talking to her again. Then he said to get up because if we were going to go to the Verizon store, we had to get there before it closed. By then, I completely believed Nate anyway. So I told him we didn't have to go anywhere or get a new phone, and that I believed him, and I knew he didn't cheat on me, and that he would never do that. Nate said that he would hope I knew that, and that he didn't understand why I didn't take his word for it in the first place. I started trying to explain why I didn't want to just immediately dismiss what Becca had said happened. But Nate said that he really couldn't listen to that right now. I said that was fair and agreed that I would cut Becca off. But that first I wanted to try to get her to admit that nothing happened. Nate said fine, but to call her with my phone on speaker, because he thought he also deserved to hear her admit that she was lying. So I called Becca, and I said the same thing to her that I said to Nate, that I figured out how to recover deleted messages on Signal. She asked me why I would need to do that. So that was when I knew for sure that she was definitely making it up, and not just confused somehow. I said it was because I wanted to have proof of what she and Nate talked about. Becca asked me if I saw their messages, so I lied and said yes. After that, Becca just went silent until finally I asked her if she was going to say anything. Then she asked me if that meant that we were engaged now. So then I really just lost it on her and screamed at her, asking her if she was effing serious and what the F was wrong with her. And how could that possibly be all that she had to say? Becca started screaming back, telling me to effing calm down and about how obviously I never believed her anyway, because it's not like we broke up over it. I was crying by that point, and because of that, I couldn't really say anything else. So then Nate told Becca to go F herself, and to never ever contact either one of us ever again, and hung up on her. A minute later, Becca sent me a completely unhinged text that I'm quoting here verbatim apart from changed names. Courtney, you are supposed to be my friend for life. You are supposed to be there for me. You are supposed to be my person. But then you meet Nate, and now you only care about Nate. Everything is about Nate. Tell me why Nate comes to pick me up when I call you. I called you, not your precious effing Nate. I only want you to see how F-ed up this is, but do you? No. Of course you don't. Of course you choose Nate over me like you always do, and like you always will. You pretend to care about me, but I can see you don't care. It is pathetic, Courtney. You are a pathetic woman who would choose a man over a friend. But since you can't say it yourself, I will. Since you have to have your sweet, perfect little baby Nate do it for you, I will. Goodbye, Courtney. Is that what you want? Goodbye forever. I hope you effing got what you effing want. There were the 3 dots after that showing she was still typing more. But I blocked her before she sent it. I don't care about anything else that she has to say. I'm sure it's all just going to be more bullshit about why this is my fault or justifications about why what she did wasn't that bad and I should forgive her. I know Nate is probably right, and there's no non-crazy logic behind why Becca would stoop to doing something like this. But obviously I've still been thinking about it. And my best guess is that whoever said that Becca still blames me and Nate, apparently mostly Nate, for her being a drunk mess who can't get her life together is right. It seems like she somehow thought that if she said she hooked up with Nate, I'd break up with him, but still want to be friends with her, and then everything would magically be fixed. As far as stuff with Nate, I asked him if he thought he could ever forgive me for doubting him. And he said that since I came to my senses and I cut Becca off, he guesses we can try to put it behind us. I don't think he's still going to propose anytime soon. After this, I probably wouldn't if I were him. And from what Nate said, he didn't actually do any planning yet other than asking Becca about rings, and if I'd think a public proposal was tacky or not. All he was doing so far was trying to get ideas without me knowing he was talking to her about it. So just based on that, I think probably it's not going to happen for a while if it still does at all. Also, thanks to everyone for the advice and support. I know I didn't respond to many comments, but I really did appreciate everyone who cared enough to want to help. Comment from OP. I'm sure she won't just go away. I'm already expecting her to try to get our other friends to get in the middle of everything as soon as she figures out she's actually blocked. And I'm not just ignoring her. I hope she won't try to do anything else, but I guess at this point I really can't know with her. I'm hoping things are okay with Nate. I think in a while they will be. Update. After 1 year. I haven't logged into this account for about a year, but I got a few messages asking for an update, so here it is. I'll keep it as short as I can. Unfortunately, I have nothing good to report. It turned out that whatever was going on with Becca that caused her to make false accusations about Nate was the beginning of some kind of psychotic break. After I blocked her, she made a whole bunch of fake accounts and started sending me completely unhinged SHT about how I ruined her life and threatening to get revenge on me and Nate. This went on for literally months with her sending me dozens of messages a day. I found out from other friends that she was making multiple posts on Facebook every day that were semi-coherent rants about how much she hated me and how I was evil and ruined her life intentionally. I tried to talk to the police 2 different times to get a restraining order because I was afraid that Becca was going to show up at our apartment and attack me or Nate. I literally even got a front door camera because I was so scared that she was going to hurt us. The police said that because Becca wasn't threatening actual violence, she was just a nuisance, and they couldn't do anything. They acted like I was an idiot because it isn't illegal to talk SHT on Facebook, and they basically told me to just keep blocking her whenever she made a new account, and eventually she'd get bored and move on. Then finally, there was an incident where someone broke the windshield of Nate's car while he was parked at his work. I guess it could have just been a random act of vandalism because his wasn't the only car that got windows broken. But at the time I was 100% sure it was Becca, so I went to the police again. Eventually an officer went to talk to Becca, and she said she didn't touch Nate's car, and again, I have no proof that she did, but after the police talked to her, Becca got put into a psych ward for a week because apparently her apartment was filthy, and she was drunk out of her mind 24/7 and a danger to herself. I have not heard anything from Becca after she left the psych ward. I don't know if she was diagnosed with something, or if she's medicated now or what. I found out that she moved in with her dad, who, thank God, lives in a different state. I look at her social media every so often to make sure she's not posting about me again, and that she's nowhere around me. I haven't mentioned Nate much in this update because we're no longer together. He broke up with me after the windshield incident because he couldn't handle being constantly harassed by Becca. And to be honest, I don't think he ever forgave me for not taking his side immediately when everything started. It really hurt, but I can't blame him. I tried to talk to him about fixing things between us after Becca was gone, but he just wasn't interested. TLDR, Becca went crazy for real. Nate dumped me. Second story. OP accused her husband of cheating with his stepsister. It turns out she sought him and is now blackmailing him to divorce OP so they can get married, otherwise threatening to falsely accuse him of saying her. And that's how she got kicked out of the family. Just what the title says. I believe my 24F husband 24M and his stepsister 23F are having an affair. My head is spinning, and I don't know what to do. My husband's parents got divorced when he was 15, and his dad remarried when he was 17. His stepmother has one daughter, let's call her Jess, who was 16 at the time of the marriage. They all lived together for about a year and a half before he left for college, which is where he and I met freshman year. Our sophomore year, Jess Lee began going to the same school as us. He introduced her to our friend group, and she quickly became a part of it. They always seemed more like friends than siblings, because obviously their parents didn't marry till they were older. But they'd sometimes refer to each other as bro and sis. Back then I sometimes got the vibe that she was flirting with him, but he never returned it, and I just brushed it off as her personality, and that I was being crazy because there was no way that would happen. Fast forward to now. We all still live in our hometown and see each other pretty often. Jess is single and hasn't had a boyfriend in several years. She and my husband are still very close. When we are all hanging out together, including their parents, if we're sitting on the couch, she will sit right up against him, sometimes even put her head on his shoulder if he's showing her videos on his phone. I have always found it odd, but again have brushed it off. Of course they aren't actually related, but it would still be too taboo and weird, so I've never fully let myself have the suspicions. However, over the last 6 months, things have been getting weirder. Both my husband and I's birthdays are in April and only a week apart, so over the last couple years we've kind of just combined them and celebrated both at the same time. We had friends and family over, and normally we also receive joint gifts. But this year Jess got my husband something specific to him, fairly expensive gaming headphones and a watch, but nothing for me, and she also got him a card and wrote a decent amount in it. I didn't get to read it when we were opening things, and then later on I couldn't find it. When I asked my husband where it was, he brushed it off, saying, oh, he must have accidentally thrown it out with its envelope. But the envelope was still with everything else on the counter. They've been texting a lot more, and she's also been talking to me less. Remember, she and I have been friends for the last 5 years. Sometimes I'll see texts from her pop up on his phone screen, and there will be emojis. This will be while he's holding it, and he'll unlock it pretty fast, so I've never really been able to see what they say. If I ask her to meet up or hang out with just me, she's always busy. But if it's her coming over our home to see the both of us, she never says no. He also has been going to see her more often, which is kind of a complicated detail, because she still lives at home with her mom and his dad. So he just tells me he's going to hang out with his dad for a bit, but I have a feeling it's for her. He and I have also been less intimate lately. Neither of us have ever had super high sex drives, but we have always averaged at least twice a week, and now it's about 2-3 times a month. What's pushed me over the edge is when we all got together this past July 4th. We were at my Phil's house for a big cookout pool party. While in the pool, she kept hanging on him from behind. Picture him giving her a piggyback ride in the water, splashing him, being overly playful, etc. I kept thinking in my head I was crazy because maybe after all these years they really do have a sibling-like dynamic, and she's just messing around. But I also caught her staring at me when my husband and I were being close, and she looked angry. Now, cut to the worst of it all. We were all done in the pool and went inside to change. I was with my husband in his room, and right in the middle of us changing, she came in without knocking randomly, asking if she could borrow my hairbrush. My husband didn't have any clothes on. I was horrified and said something like, OMG, you need to knock first. She seemed unfazed and lazily covered her eyes, saying, oh whatever, he's basically like my brother. My husband seemed kind of embarrassed, but also not as much as you'd expect. She left like it was nothing. Since then she has barely spoken to me at all, and I am absolutely spiraling at the thought of this. Am I being crazy? I haven't said anything to him yet about this because I'm so scared to be wrong, and then I'm just accusing him of sleeping with his stepsister. I need others to tell me if they agree with what I've been seeing or not. Small update. Thank you to everyone who has responded. When I made this post, I was hoping for validation of my worries, but also scared of that at the same time. I'm trying to keep it together and act normal around him the best I can. Tomorrow he's going over his dad's, so he says, so I plan to show up there and see what's going on. Another slight update because I know you guys are invested. An update, but not really. Yes, I did go to his dad's house Saturday. A lot has happened since then, and I haven't been on my phone much. When I get time later tonight, I will post a full update of what's gone on. I will most likely make a new post about it, because it's been hard keeping up with the comments on this one. Bear with me as I get my head sorted out. Comments. Silver plate lining. If I were in your shoes, I'd ask to look through his text messages. together with him sitting right next to you, if he'd prefer. Don't explain why. You could offer for him to look through your texts at the same time, if he'd like to. He shouldn't have anything to hide, and he should hand it right over to you. He will have questions, and I'd suggest you answer them all honestly, but only after you see his text. But his reaction to the suggestion will tell you a lot. If he's angry or tries to say that you're crazy, something is up. If he disappears somewhere with his phone, he's deleting things before he shows you. OP. I'm worried to do it this way because if their texts are totally innocent, he find nothing. I'll have to tell him why I wanted to see it, and I'll seem nuts. He's got an iPhone and a MacBook where his texts are synced up, so I might try to get a hold of his MacBook and read them on my own first. He uses his laptop for work mostly though, and has a password on it, so I'll have to come up with some excuse about needing to borrow it. Appropriate underscore, put underscore 7963. Truthfully, I don't know any brother-sister duo that acts like that. I know siblings can be close, but not that close. Maybe try to investigate more before springing any accusations on your husband. It seems a little odd to me, though. Yikes. OP. This is what I haven't been sure of because I have siblings, but 2 sisters, no brothers. Also, with stepbrothers, I have no idea if it's a different dynamic, especially since they didn't live together for very long since they were older. I definitely think I need to actually dig into this to see if I can find legitimate evidence, but I'm honestly scared. Update. 19 days later. Hey everyone. Sorry that it's been so long since I made my original post about this. If you haven't seen it, you can find it on my profile. To say that our family has totally imploded since I last posted would be an understatement. So much has happened that I never expected or was prepared for, so I apologize that I kind of ghosted all of you, but this has been really hard. Just an FYI, I'll be mentioning text messages a fair amount, and it'll be paraphrasing. Leaving off from my last update, I did go to his dad's house that weekend that my husband told me he was going to see him. When I got there, only my husband's car was in the driveway. I wasn't sure what to do, if I should try calling his dad, calling my husband, or what. I decided to just go in because I didn't want to play games. I walk in and hear his and Jess' voices coming from the kitchen, and it sounds like they were yelling. Even now, I couldn't tell you what they were saying. I was so full of adrenaline as I approached them that it was like I was watching them on mute or something, and not actually hearing what was happening. He spotted me and looked like a deer in the headlights, and all I could muster up was to say, "What's going on?" I stared at them for a couple seconds, and then my fight or flight kicked in. I'm very non-confrontational, so my instinct was to turn around and run. He chased after me and pulled me into a guest room to talk. Again, I asked what was going on, that he's been acting so weird and so has Jess, and point blank asked if he was cheating on me. He seemed shocked at the question, but then, out of nowhere, started bawling his eyes out. I've never seen my husband cry before. He said that no, he's not cheating, but has something to tell me, but couldn't do it there and needed to leave it for us to go back to our house. At first I protested and said no. I needed to know right then and there, but he still was having a breakdown and begging me, so I agreed. We left his car there and drove home together in mine. But I sat in silence the whole ride as he cried, and was trying to collect himself. When we got home, we sat in the living room, and I once again asked him what the F was happening, and my patience had run thin. Then out came his word, vomit. He told me that in college, our junior just sophomore year, after him and a bunch of our friends had gone to a party we were dating by this time, but I wasn't there that night. I'd come home for the weekend to hang out with family that was in town, and he got really drunk. Our guy friends kind of ditched him to go hook up, so Jess offered him to crash on her couch for the night our school had on campus apartments, and she had a single because she was on raw. He said he woke up at some point after that, with his pants down and her on top of him, having sex. He told me at the time he felt out of it, and didn't really get what was happening, and that's all he remembers was waking up and feeling it seeing her. He then woke up again a couple hours later, and she was asleep in her own bed, so he left and went back to his own dorm. He never told anyone. It took him a long time to even fully understand what had happened, and he felt like he couldn't tell anybody because 1. He felt ashamed and embarrassed. 2. He didn't think anyone would believe him. 3. He didn't want to be known as the guy who slept with his stepsister. 4. He was afraid of losing me. And 5. He was worried about his dad, and if he found out that it could affect or ruin his new marriage, and that his dad is so happy with his stepmom. He told me he basically just acted like nothing happened, even around Jess, when we all hung out together. He said he and her never spoke about it or said anything until a couple years later, when he and I got engaged after graduation. She sent him a text essentially saying she loved him and thought about that night all the time, and that why did their parents have to meet and get married? They could be together otherwise, etc. Essentially, she is obsessed with him. Shamefully, I will admit that when he first told me all of this, I wasn't sure what to think or believe until I saw their text messages. I questioned him, saying if this was the case, why are they always talking? Why wouldn't he distance himself now that we're married and out of school? He told me it started up again with her about 6 months ago. Like I said in my original post, when he and I told our families that we decided we wanted to try for a baby. He had a screenshot of the text she sent him the next day ranting about how he shouldn't do this. Marriages aren't permanent until a baby comes into the mix. There's still a chance for them to be honest with their family. And for him to leave me. She still loves him after all this time, etc. He replied, saying he loved me and wanted to start a family with me, and that he didn't love her in that way, and he never wanted her to bring this up to him ever again. That's when her demeanor changed, and she said if he didn't love her, why did he FCK her, and what would their family think? Essentially blackmailing him. I read through as many of their texts as I could handle, and it was always her saying things like she was thinking about him. She wants to see him. She'd even send texts while we were all together, telling him he looks good in that outfit. Sometimes he wouldn't reply, and others he'd be trying to have a normal convo steer it in a different direction, and sometimes just telling her to stop it. The days he's told me he's going to hang out with his dad, it's her begging him to go over there so she can see him, or she will tell her mom everything. So he'd agree to go, but he swears nothing has ever happened, that one of their parents would be there a majority of the time, and it would just be all of them on the patio or in the living room. That day, he went there to tell her he was sick of it and couldn't do it anymore. She could tell people whatever she wanted, but he was done, and that's why they were yelling. I sat there taking it all in and honestly was speechless, as I did not expect any of this. I asked him about our sudden lack of intimacy, essentially only during my fertile window since we're trying for a baby, but never any other time. And he said all of this being brought up for him mentally has made him shut down about sex. He was only doing it for me because I want a baby. It's taken him so long to come to terms with the fact that she assaulted him. And how this harassment. I cried. I felt betrayed by her, and then a heavy, deep empathy for him. I just hugged him and cried, and he cried too. I told him he really needs to tell his dad, because we can no longer associate with her in any way. And how can we manage that when she lives with him? At first he said no, he couldn't because he's worried they won't believe him, and also doesn't want to ruin his dad's life, because how could the marriage with his stepmother survive this? I told him I don't have an answer for that. He has to trust that his dad will believe him. And I was also worried about her panicking after their argument and doing something crazy. He agreed to tell his dad and said he wanted to do it alone. The following weekend he met up with dad and told him everything, showed the text to him, etc. His dad believed him and, like me, was caught off guard and speechless. This led to him telling his wife and saying he was kicking Jess out. However, his wife did not believe it. She claims my husband must have edited the texts, somehow actual texts in the message app that you can scroll through, and it's Jess's number attached to the contact. Jess freaked out, saying none of it was true, and he was the one who'd been harassing her. That's when my husband threatened to take it all to the police for an order of protection against her if she did not tell the truth. And she finally admitted to everything in an insane meltdown. His stepmom is horrified. His dad doesn't know if he can get past her not believing my husband and accusing him. We are currently in this weird limbo phase of the whole family on edge. Jess is still living there. His dad has demanded she leave and has given her 2 weeks instead of kicking her out on the spot in an attempt to try and salvage the situation with his wife. My husband and I are having lots of talks, trying to regroup. We've put trying for a baby on hold as he seeks therapy for this. He is still considering going to the police for the harassment. My heart is broken for him, and I'm also trying to come to terms with the truth that Jesus, whom I've known for years, would do something like this. I was prepared to uncover an affair, but never this. I'm not sure if there will be any more updates after this. Maybe if my husband decides to pursue legal action. I want to say thanks to everybody who pushed for me to dig into my suspicions. Otherwise, this could have gone even further. I don't like to think of what could have happened. I probably left things out. So if people have questions, I'll try my best to reply to comments. Abesjed77. Hello. You should push your husband to go the legal route. This is messed up. OP. I've told him that he should because she's unstable. It scares me because she seems so totally normal. Like this is the biggest shock of my life, learning her true behavior. And someone like that is totally unpredictable. He knows he needs to, but is trying to mentally prepare, And I'm trying to not push him too hard because this has been a lot. Okay, lunch 2852. Oh wow. That's so intense. How are you doing with all of this? Way to be there for your husband. And also, I'm glad that the truth came out. OP, I'm really hurt and overwhelmed. Her and I were close friends for so long, so I'm really battling how she betrayed him, but me too. And I also feel guilty for having this back thought of feeling lied to by him, when I know this wasn't his fault. He was assaulted and essentially stalked by her, so I in no way blame him, just trying to shake the feeling and hoping it fades. Winter Blueberry 232. Therapy will help. It's a lot of SHT to unpack. Give yourselves grace. I can't imagine any of this is easy. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.